The glass was cool in my hand, the bubbles of the champagne rising like a warning in my chest. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, the soft chatter of the party fading into a hum as Jessica's smile stretched a little too wide, too tight. The air around me felt heavy, like something was shifting, like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't control. A thought flashed in my mind, too quick to grab hold of, until I looked down at my drink again. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. You're not alone in these kinds of moments. I couldn't breathe. Not yet. But the chill creeping down my spine told me I was already too deep into a game I didn't want to play. Let me show you how it all began. I could feel the weight of the moment settling over me as the champagne glass slipped from my daughter-in-law's hand. It was like time slowed, the glass shattering just as Jessica's mother, Helen, crumpled to the floor beside me. Foam began to collect at the corners of her mouth, and panic set in. My first thought wasn't about her, though. It was about me. My stomach twisted as I realized this wasn't an accident. Someone had tried to kill me, and they'd almost gotten away with it. The party had been filled with laughter just moments ago, everyone toasting my success. I'd just sold my company for $23 million, hard-earned, every penny of it. My son Michael had insisted on throwing the celebration. But something felt off. Jessica had been acting too perfect, like a woman on a mission. And when I saw her near the champagne table, nervously glancing around before slipping something into one of the glasses, that's when I knew. I could almost hear my heart beat in my ears as the glass she'd tampered with came closer. She was offering it to me like nothing was wrong. It was all happening so fast. I took the glass, thanked her, and then it hit me. Helen had grabbed my drink instead. This wasn't just a poisoned glass. It was a calculated betrayal. My own family had planned this, and it was only the beginning of something much darker than I'd ever expected. I've spent 70 years on this earth, and I've learned that nothing comes easily. My husband passed away 15 years ago, and in his absence, I built my own company from the ground up. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I'd always known how to make things work, how to rise when life pushed me down. The sale of my consulting firm for $23 million felt like a victory, but also like the end of a chapter. And now, at this retirement party, I was supposed to be celebrating. But even in the midst of all the laughter and congratulations, there was something in the air, an undercurrent I couldn't quite ignore. My son Michael, bless his heart, insisted on throwing the party. "Mom, you deserve it," he said, his brown eyes looking at me with that familiar intensity. I didn't need his validation, but I understood why he did it. He'd always been the one to need reassurance, to need me to be proud of him. And Jessica, his wife, always the perfect hostess, was practically glowing as she arranged the flowers and polished the glassware like she was auditioning for Martha Stewart's job. It was all too perfect. I've always been aware of the subtle tensions that come with wealth, the way it shifts relationships. Michael and Jessica weren't poor, but they lived well beyond their means, and I'd been there to help, of course. A few thousand here, a little more there, just to keep things running smoothly for them. I wanted to believe it was all out of love, but tonight, as the party carried on, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were changing. I was no fool. The smiles seemed a little too bright, the laughter a little too forced. And Jessica, she was hiding something. I could feel it. Something was wrong. and I was about to find out just how wrong it really was. The night was supposed to be about celebration, but something felt off the moment I saw Jessica by the champagne table. I watched her, pretending to be the picture of grace as she rearranged the glasses, all while glancing around nervously. The way her hand trembled as she pulled out a tiny vial from her purse, subtle, but enough for me to notice, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. She didn't want anyone to see, but I saw it all. She was slipping something into one of the glasses, my favorite one, the chipped one I always used at parties. I wasn't sure at first, but as the night wore on, her actions began to make sense. I watched her move from the table, her steps too careful, her eyes scanning the room as if she were trying to avoid being caught. There was no panic in her face, no real concern, just the calculated calm of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I felt my pulse quicken, but I didn't react. Not yet. It was when she offered the glass to me that everything clicked. She was so sweet, so concerned about my health, insisting I should drink. But there was no warmth in her eyes, just the cool, calculating look of a woman who knew exactly what was at stake. My mind raced, but I remained calm on the outside. The party went on around me, but my thoughts were racing ahead, piecing the puzzle together. I didn't act immediately. I waited. I had to be sure. Helen was standing nearby, looking a bit lost without her drink. That's when I made the choice. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. I had just seen Jessica try to kill me, and I knew if I confronted her now, it would be too late. So, without a word, I switched the glasses. Helen took a sip from the glass I'd placed next to her purse, and within minutes, she was collapsing. The room erupted in panic, but I remained eerily composed. This wasn't just an accident, it was planned. Someone had tried to kill me, and I had no doubt in my mind that it wasn't just about a drink. It was about something darker. Something much more dangerous was at play, and I was only beginning to see the full picture. I needed to know why, and I had to find out quickly. This wasn't over. Far from it. It was just the beginning. As I sat in my study, the events of the evening kept replaying in my mind. The way Jessica had hovered near the champagne table, her eyes darting nervously. The way she'd offered me the drink with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It wasn't just paranoia. Something was wrong. The pieces were starting to fit together, but I needed to understand the full picture. I thought about Michael, my son, the one who had always been so ambitious, so driven. But lately, there had been a shift. His business was struggling. I knew that much. The architectural firm he'd built had been operating in the red for a while now, and he'd never been one to ask for help, until lately. His phone calls, his pleas for financial assistance disguised as casual conversation. It had all seemed normal at first, but now, I saw the pattern. The expensive lifestyle, the house they couldn't afford, the cars they leased instead of bought. They were living well beyond their means, and I had been the one to step in when they needed help. But this time, it wasn't just about money. Then there was Jessica. She'd always been a bit, well, let's say opportunistic. But her sudden interest in my health, the concern over my retirement, felt calculated. Was it because she cared, or because she wanted something more? Something bigger? I began to wonder if my son and his wife weren't just after a bit of extra cash here and there. Maybe they were after everything. My company's sale, my assets, my life's work, the poisoning. That wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of something much larger. I knew it. I could feel it in my gut. And if I didn't act soon, I was going to lose everything. I couldn't let that happen. I had to start planning my next move carefully, quietly. The stakes were higher than I'd thought, and I wasn't going to let my family's greed destroy everything I had worked for. The first step would be to get more information on them, on their finances, on every last piece of their puzzle. The truth was out there, and I was going to find it. It wasn't until I sat alone, surrounded by the familiar comfort of my home, that I could finally let myself think clearly. The pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place, one by one. Michael and Jessica had always been a bit much to handle, but I never imagined they'd be capable of something like this. It started as little things, the forced smiles, the overly concerned remarks about my health, the way Jessica would always bring up assisted living or nursing homes whenever we spoke about the future. I'd dismissed them as misguided attempts at being helpful, maybe even caring. But now, the truth was staring me in the face, too obvious to ignore any longer. The poisoning. That wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some isolated incident. No, that was part of a much larger plan, and it took me a moment to fully grasp the extent of it. My son, Michael, had been struggling for years, but I never thought he would go this far. He'd always seemed too proud to ask for help, but I had given him a hand when I could. It wasn't just the house, the cars, the lifestyle they couldn't afford. It was deeper than that. Michael wasn't just worried about the future. He was counting on it. On me. On my wealth. Jessica, on the other hand, had always been calculating. I'd never liked how she acted like she belonged in my life, but I'd tolerated her for Michael's sake. But now I saw her for what she really was, someone who wanted something more. My money, my assets. She'd always been a little too eager to help, a little too quick to talk about plans for my future without asking what I wanted. Now, I understood. They were trying to get me out of this house, trying to push me into some facility where they could get their hands on everything. The power of attorney, the inheritance. They needed me vulnerable. But that wasn't going to happen. Not on my watch. I'd let things unfold for a while, given them the chance to show me their cards. But now, I knew what I was dealing with. And it wasn't just a matter of wealth. It was control. Control over my life. Over my decisions. They weren't just trying to push me into a nursing home. They were trying to push me out of my own life. The next steps were clear. I had to protect myself. I couldn't wait any longer to act. Too much was at stake. And if I didn't move now, I could lose everything. I wasn't going to let that happen. Not after everything I had built. It was time to make my move. I would take control back. And when I did, they wouldn't know what hit them. I sat there in silence, the weight of everything sinking in. The truth was no longer just a vague feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was clear, undeniable. Michael and Jessica had been playing a game, and I was the pawn. For the first time, I saw the full extent of their manipulation. The poisoning attempt, the pushing for a nursing home, the incessant talk about my health. It wasn't about caring for me. It was all about control. Control over my wealth, control over my life. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had been passive, letting things unfold because I didn't want to believe my own family could betray me like this. But now, I saw them for what they were: calculating, desperate, and willing to go to any lengths to get what they wanted. It was one thing to know they had their eyes on my money, but it was another to realize they'd be willing to harm me to get it. That wasn't just betrayal. It was a violation. I wasn't going to let them take what I had built, not without a fight. I knew I had to act calmly, methodically, and without hesitation. No more passive observations. I needed to understand exactly what they were up to and how far they'd go. My first move was clear. I needed to investigate. I had to find out where they were bleeding money, what debts they had, and how deeply they were relying on me. I didn't trust anyone now, not even my own son. I began to make a list in my mind, organizing the pieces of the puzzle. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. They had been maneuvering for years, testing the waters. And now, they thought they had me cornered. They thought I wouldn't see it. But I did. I'd built a life of independence, of strength, and I wasn't going to let them destroy it. The next steps would be critical. I had to move quickly, but carefully. I couldn't let them see what I was doing until it was too late. My wealth, my assets, they weren't just mine anymore. They were the last line of defense against their greed. And I wasn't about to lose them without a fight. I'd need to gather evidence, make sure everything was locked down before they even knew what hit them. I'd need to move fast, but I would be methodical. Every step, calculated. I would take control back, piece by piece. It wasn't just about protecting my money. It was about protecting my life, my dignity. And they weren't going to get away with it. Not now. Not ever. I was sitting in my study, scanning through some of the documents I had been gathering when I found it. A life insurance policy, buried deep within a pile of papers. At first, I thought it was just another routine document, another form to overlook. But then I saw the beneficiary, Michael, and Jessica, my own son, and my daughter-in-law. I felt the air leave my lungs, the shock flooding through me. This wasn't just a policy. This was their safety net, their backup plan. If something happened to me, if I were to die, it wasn't just about losing a mother or a wife. It was about losing the wealth they'd been scheming to control. I stared at the policy for a moment, unable to breathe, unable to comprehend the extent of their plan. They hadn't just been manipulating me. They were preparing for my death, planning their future on my grave. The anger hit me like a wave, the sick realization that they had been planning this all along, like vultures circling, waiting for me to fall. But then, there was something else beneath the anger, an undeniable determination. This wasn't just a betrayal anymore. It was a threat to everything I'd worked for, to everything I had left. And they were going to learn that they had underestimated me. I wasn't going to let this stand. I had spent my life building my business, my independence, and I'd be damned if I was going to let them destroy it all for their own greed. This document, this revelation, was the final push I needed. I knew what I had to do now. I was done being passive, done pretending I didn't see their plans. The gloves were off. I would take back control, piece by piece. It wasn't just about protecting my money anymore. It was about protecting my life, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I stood there, in the quiet of my office, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Everything had led to this. The hours of planning, the sleepless nights, the careful moves I had made. Now, it was time to face them. My family, the ones who had betrayed me, the ones who had thought I wouldn't see through their lies. I had seen enough. The papers were ready, the legal team was in place, and I was ready to confront the truth head on. As I called Michael into the room, I felt a strange calmness. This wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't about the betrayal or the pain. This was about taking back control, about standing up for myself after everything I'd endured. I had built my life on my own terms, and no one was going to take that from me. He entered, his usual cocky demeanor fading when he saw the papers on the desk. It wasn't a confrontation that I was interested in. It was resolution. I let him stew in silence as I outlined the steps I had taken to protect my wealth. The trust I had set up, the new legal safeguards, the financial control that would no longer slip through my fingers. The moment I took the reins, the moment I stopped playing their game, was the moment I truly understood the power I had. I wasn't the helpless woman they thought I was. I was the one in control, the one who had outsmarted them. And as Michael tried to play his usual tricks, to plead and manipulate, it didn't matter. The damage was done, and I wasn't going to let it continue. As the conversation ended, I felt a strange sense of release. The anger I'd held for so long, the hurt, the frustration, they all faded into something different. I had taken the necessary steps to ensure that my future would be secure. I had protected myself, and I had stood up for everything I had worked so hard to build. It wasn't just about the wealth, though. It was about the control, the independence, the sense that I had weathered the storm and come out stronger. My life, my choices, would no longer be dictated by anyone but me. As I looked out of the window, I felt a deep sense of empowerment wash over me. The journey had been difficult, but I had grown. I had learned to trust my instincts, to stand firm in the face of betrayal, and to take action when it mattered most. And as the sun began to set, I knew one thing for sure. I was in control of my own destiny now. The rest of the world could try, but they would never break me. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything that has transpired, it feels like a lifetime ago when I first started noticing the cracks in my family's facade. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation. It was all a lot to carry, and for a time, I wondered if I'd be able to handle it. But as I look back now, I realize just how far I've come. I've learned that strength isn't just about facing the storms head on. It's about standing firm in your truth, no matter how much it shakes the foundation beneath you. The emotional toll has been heavy. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I felt alone in a sea of people I thought I could trust. But in the end, those doubts were just stepping stones to a deeper understanding of who I really am. I've had to fight for my independence, for my voice, and for my future. And now, standing here, I can say with certainty, I'm not just a survivor. I'm stronger than I've ever been. This journey has been one of awakening, not just to the dark intentions of those closest to me, but to the power I hold within myself. I've taken control of my own narrative, and there's no turning back. The emotional cost was high, but the lessons were worth it. I've learned that betrayal can shake you, but it doesn't have to break you. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in a way you never expected? Share your thoughts, your story, in the comments below. Your experiences matter, and if you think this story might resonate with someone else, share it. Let's keep the conversation going, because we all have a voice, and we all deserve to be heard.